Thank you. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting of the 8th of July. It's good to see you all here. It is a long agenda today, longer than normal. We've got a lot of, if I dare say, routine items coming here which need to come at this particular time of year, so that's why they're here today. So I am going to try and run a tight ship in terms of questions from anybody. And I will, in terms of the members' questions, which I presume we have got some members' questions, I will only allow the half hour for that. I won't, but you've obviously got the opportunity to speak at other times. So first, and I should also point out that with John Taylor here, we have, I'm sorry, is it Harry? Yes. Harry, who is shadowing John for the week as part of work experience or whatever. So welcome, Harry. Right, okay, membership of the Cabinet. We are all here, bar Nosheen Dad, who unfortunately is unable to be with us today. So that's membership of the committee. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I see if those are approved? Thank you. Declarations of interest. Everything will be held in public. There isn't any private papers to go with any of the items, so we won't be going into private session again. So that does mean, Harry, if you've got the stomach, you can stay right to the end of the meeting. It is a bit longer than usual, I expect. Sorry, that was admission of the public rather than declarations of interest. I should have said any declarations of interest from the Cabinet members here. No? Right. Admission of the public is as I've just said. Deputations and petitions, I believe we do not have any. Thank you. And questions by members of the public. I don't think we have any questions of members of the public either, so thank you. So it is on to the members' questions, and the first person I've got is Councillor Scott.
Thank you. My question is to the leader. In November 2024, full council passed a motion instructing Cabinet to act on ethical procurement, specifically to ensure that the council was not complicit in human rights violations through its supply chains. Despite this, Cabinet did not issue a response, take a formal decision or provide political leadership on the matter. Instead, the issue was redirected to the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee, a non-decision-making body. With no Cabinet member named, no portfolio lead accountable, and no record of delegated authority, why did Cabinet not take the ownership of this procurement report arising at the Council's motion on ethical procurement? And why instead was it submitted to this other committee with no named Cabinet member, no political lead, as I said before, and no record of a delegated decision?
Thank you, Councillor Scott. A very simple answer to that. It was never the responsibility of the Cabinet. It was the responsibility of the Council. It was the Council that passed that motion. It was the Council that instructed the leader of the Council, not of the Cabinet, to write to government, which I did. We got a response which went back to Council in January, and then I asked for the review of our procurement policies, which, because that does fall into the remit of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee, that's where that went. The results of that review, that's where that went. If Corporate Governance and Audit had chosen to, they could have passed that back to Council, but they wouldn't have passed it to the Cabinet. The Cabinet had no responsibility for that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So why did Cabinet not take ownership of this procurement? Procurement is an executive function under Local Government Act 2000. It is Cabinet's responsibility to lead and respond to council motions on this matter. The report included future actions, but no Cabinet decision or oversight was recorded. Who authorised for this process, which you've no doubt already just stipulated? You've authorised it. And why wasn't this brought first to Cabinet in public arena rather than... Right, okay. So I'll continue the last bit. Will Cabinet now commit to issuing a formal public response to the original full council motion and bring forward an updated procurement strategy for political approval with the proper accountability and transparency?
The corporate governance and audit is part of the executive, and it was completely the right place for that review to be reported to. The motion never asked for Cabinet to look at it. It only asked for actions to be taken, which were by the Council. It went to the Council. The Council had that, because they passed that motion, they had full ownership of that. It was never suggested that it should go to the Cabinet, and there was no reason why the Cabinet should make any political statement on that whatsoever. The Council had already made a political statement, and we then looked to undertake an operational review. Councillor Moore, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. At the last Cabinet meeting, I asked Councillor Hawkins, since the closure of Nab Lane 6 months ago, has an impact assessment been carried out for the Dewsbury site to look at capacity and safety issues with the increased demand? Councillor Hawkins informed me he would get back to me. I've received no feedback or response, so my question is, why not?
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for your question. Apologies for the delay in getting this back to you. I do have the information and we'll send it along in the middle of this meeting as well. We have been comparing the tonnage received, which was originally received from Nab Lane, which we were expecting to see in Weaving Lane. We've received 600 tonnes less than what we were expecting at Weaving Lane. Obviously, that has spread out to other household waste and recycling centres as well. But there is also, in Weaving Lane specifically, the dynamic with the TRU. The TRU order going back to 2022 identified that there would be disruption to Weaving Lane in Dewsbury, significant restrictions and potentially closures of that site as well. To alleviate those issues, back in 2022, the Council entered a legal agreement with Network Rail to give the Essence obligations to construct a replacement centre on Weaving Lane's location on the opposite side to the Council's land. This would allow regular operations to continue with no cost to the Council. Construction works for the replacement site began earlier this year. TRU are working towards handing that site over to us a little later on in summer. That's why we've seen some disruption on the back of that as well. It is intended that switch over to the new site will be an overnight thing with very minimal disruption, but the exact timings of that are just being confirmed and finalised at the moment. But I'll ensure during this meeting as well, Councillor Moore, I send that with the figures to back it up along to yourselves as well. Apologies again for the delay.
Have you got a supplementary, Councillor Moore?
Yeah. I've been informed by a worker at the Dewsbury waste site that due to a lack of dialogue between Kirklees Council and Network Rail, the Trans-Pennine upgrade works have resulted in part of the current site being lost. I've also been informed that a new facility is being created behind the large sorting sheds to compensate for this. Can you confirm if this is accurate? And if so, how has this affected demand and site capacity? And secondly, if it is true, what impact does it add on site safety for both workers and members of the public?
I think I sort of captured a bit of that in my initial response about the agreement with the TRU that was made back in 2022. So it's not this isn't a new development. This is something that's we've been well aware of as a council and as Suez as the operator for a number of years now. As I say, that construction of a replacement centre in the same location was agreed at that time as well, no cost to the council and with minimal disruption to actual operation and impact. It should fulfil the exact same function. I will take away your query about the sort of any safety issues that might arise from it. I trust that it's all operating in line with as we'd expect, but I'll double check that and include that in my communication back to you as well, Councillor Moore. But again, thank you for that question.
Councillor Bramwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to address the issue in my ward of St John's Church. St John's Church has had ongoing maintenance issues for many years. Back in 2020, the council, during the COVID period, the first lockdown, the council didn't and couldn't cut or maintain that cemetery. So myself, my neighbours, our residents, we came together and we cut back that churchyard as volunteers, under the proviso that the council came to an agreement with the church that they would maintain. That was the agreement. 2 weeks ago, I received a call from the Reverend and from the church, and they showed me that the church hadn't been cut in months. You couldn't see any graves. I've had residents crying out for help. One resident, her son and her husband are both buried there. It is a massive, massive risk for anyone that needs to visit. The response from council initially to the church group was because it has become so overgrown, you couldn't cut it anymore because it's a risk for your workers. You couldn't get to the graves. However, this morning, you've got down and you've managed to cut. But there is no agreement to maintain, despite the council stating to the press that they know they are responsible for it. So I would like a commitment today from council for regular maintenance of this churchyard.
Councillor Pinnock, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So first of all, I think it's important to recognise the concerns that you've raised today about St John's Church Cemetery, and the council do recognise the importance of this site to the local community as a place of remembrance and heritage. It is the council's responsibility, you're right, to maintain the cemetery, but also particularly in relation to managing the vegetation, maintaining the boundaries and ensuring safety for the general public. So that's something that we're certainly committed to making sure happen. The situation at the moment is we are undertaking a review of all the churchyards, the closed churchyards, to ensure that the work is done on these churchyards and that public safety is put first. I apologise that it's taken so long for it to be done, and I'm pleased to hear that now it's being maintained, is what you're saying? It's been cut back, and that is something that we will be doing going forward. What we need to do is we need to review the situation. I think the council officers have been in touch with you and explained the financial difficulties that we've had to maintain closed church sites and difficulties with resource and staff and so on. So that has been an issue, but we recognise it's our responsibility to make sure that the public is safe. So there will be maintenance going forward. There will be regular maintenance going forward, but obviously, as I've said, this review has to happen, and based on the outcome of the review, it'll be clear as to how often and when it will be undertaken.
Supplementary, Councillor Bramwell.
Councillor Pinnock, first of all, thank you for how you've handled and spoke about this issue, because it means a lot to me and my residents. I've got family members that are also laid to rest there, so personally it has an effect on me. I also want to say thank you for agreeing to regular maintenance of the churchyard. That's going to go a long way with my residents, so thank you. Just going back to the financial difficulties, although I completely understand, I don't agree. My residents' council tax is being risen as services are being cut. I do not agree that it should be affecting those that have already left, those that we should be showing respect to. So moving forward, in terms of the review, which I completely understand, I am asking that myself, my colleagues, all three of us, regardless of party affiliation, all three colleagues, my residents, the Reverend and the church, are all involved in building that concept and being involved in that review.
Councillor Pinnock.
Unfortunately, I can't provide the details of how it's going to happen, But that to me sounds quite sensible.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, you've got a question.
Thank you. And it's a question for you. Can you tell me how often and when you've met with the farming community this year?
I will say that personally I have not met with the farming community, though I do understand that in some areas the council is in touch. But supplementary, Councillor Taylor.
The reason I asked was a council decision that you were asked to meet with the farming community on the back of the government's decision to bring in the family farm tax. So there was a motion passed by council, and one of the items in that motion was asking the leader of the council to meet with the farming community and to look at ways that we can support them through this difficult period. So I'm a little disappointed, if I'm honest, that A, you weren't aware of it, and B, nothing's happened. So it's just a little, shall we call it a nudge, to say that there might be something you might like to think about doing.
Certainly, I do remember the motion, and yes, and I do remember that you asked that I meet with them. But we don't have a mechanism for doing that. That was the issue. As I said, there are some ways in which the council does meet with farmers, but we haven't got a mechanism for meeting with the farming community. And I'm afraid I haven't had the resources personally to be able to garner that community together. I'm quite happy to work with you or other members who have got rural aspects to their wards who are in touch with the farmers to work with you to gather farmers together to talk about. The issue, of course, I think is one which is probably that you want to raise, or farmers might want to raise, is one which is out of the hands of the council. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I think mine might be to Councillor Turner on this one. Councillor Turner, has there been issues regarding flagstones that have been laid in front of Dewsbury Town Hall? We're under the impression we've been given some information that it's in dispute about the quality and standard of these flagstones, and work did stop. So I just want the assurance that, you know, the flagstones are going to be laid and they are of the quality, rather than us having to revisit at great cost.
Councillor Turner.
I'm not aware of any problems, but I will certainly go away and investigate.
Sorry, is it supplementary?
Thank you for your response, Councillor Turner. Equally, would you investigate why none of the responses when in your absence at the last Cabinet have been sent through? So when you send that through, would you send the other responses through that I asked for? Councillor Crook answered on your behalf, but he did say that he would pass it on.
Apologies, I was on holiday at the last Cabinet meeting. And I wasn't aware of any questions that was directed to me that needed a response. If you send them, if you forward me by email, I will happily respond to them.
I have another question from Councillor Taylor. First, I'll come back to you, Councillor Bramwell.
Really, this is my way of following up the last question, really, because I can't. So I'm happy to work with you about convening some support. The motion didn't ask about. There was an item about you writing to the government about the family farm tax and opposing it, but the item that I'm referring to was asking you to meet with the farming community to look at ways in which Kirklees Council can help the farming community currently. And one of the third agenda item was around procurement, about is there a way that we can buy locally. So I think there is things we can do as a council, but we need to listen and meet with them. But I'm happy to pick that up with you and support you in doing that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just to give you a little bit of assurance, I do know that in terms of our catering service, for instance, they always buy local wherever ever possible. And certainly that will be from local farmers. I mean, I don't know how much is procured from them, but they will certainly be considered. But yes, we can certainly pick that up.
We don't use local water. So we use Harrogate water rather than Shepley Spring water. But you don't expect me to miss a chance to get that one in, do you?
Except, Councillor Taylor, I'm sure you're aware that Shepley Spring water is no longer called Shepley Spring water?
You can get it. You can get Shepley Spring as a brand, but they also offer other brands as well.
Councillor Bramwell.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Dewsbury Town Centre and the risks of the town centre. So engaging with young people that utilise the town, that use it, that meet friends down there. There's certain times of the day, including during the day, that they won't go. There's certain areas of the town centre that they won't go to, Daisy Hill being one of them, the bus station also being one of them. There's certain times of the night that they won't use the town centre. The traders in the market are very, very wary of their safety in the town centre. Me, as a woman, and other women, I'm very wary of myself in the town centre. And I'm very aware that there's a Dewsbury blueprint. There's huge things taking place within the town, but there never ever seems to be preventative measures when it comes to Kirklees Council, ever. There always seems to be addressing of an issue as it stands, but there's no prevention that's ever in place. We've spoken with West Yorkshire Police repeatedly, and they're doing all they can as a workforce, but I want to know, what is Kirklees Council do to make Dewsbury Town Centre safer?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you for the question. Dewsbury Town Centre, I sit on the Dewsbury Town Board, and one of the representatives of that is Jim from the senior policeman. And at the last town board, we were discussing actually the safety of Dewsbury, and the facts are that it's a perception of being unsafe in Dewsbury Town Centre. The crime rate in Dewsbury Town Centre is no worse than anywhere else. And that was a reassurance from Jim that was the case. And that was a direct question in response to the question from the MP. Part of the Dewsbury Town, what used to be the Town Board is now the Neighbourhood Board, we get 2 million a year over the next 10 years. That's 25% of that is not capital funding, it's revenue funding, and we are looking at ways of using that revenue funding to increase security measures in the town hall, in Dewsbury Town Centre. Those negotiations are ongoing because the first tranche of money comes through next year, but we are well aware that people do feel unsafe in Dewsbury Town Centre, but it is not the fact that it is unsafe. But as I say, through the town board, we are looking at measures of how we might improve that feeling for people in the next few years, in conjunction with the police.
Supplementary, Councillor Bramwell.
Yeah, that's just absolutely not true, sorry. It's absolutely not true. For someone from Huddersfield to tell me that the town centre is not safe, is absolutely safe, and the fact that, because crime's not being reported, yeah, crime probably isn't being reported because of how that area is, and it's the council's responsibility to know its residents well enough to know that the town centre is unsafe. It's unsafe for women, it's unsafe for kids, it's unsafe for traders. And of all the work that Kirklees Council is doing, what I would like to know is, based off your answer for my supplementary, is when are we going to start seeing the positives on a local level, and how soon? When are my residents and residents across Dewsbury Borough and elsewhere going to see those benefits of the work that you're doing?
Just to reaffirm what I said, those are the figures quoted by the police, the most senior policeman in Kirklees stated those figures. So if you want to take those up with Jim, I suggest you do so. But that was in a public meeting that he actually assured the residents of Dewsbury that it is no more unsafe than anywhere else. But there is a perception of it being unsafe, but the actual figures don't bear that out.
Councillor Moore.
Sorry, I haven't actually answered my question. I asked.
Tanisha, sorry. The Councillor Turner has answered your question in the way he saw fit. That's it, sorry. Councillor Moore, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Hawkins. Anecdotally, both Councillor Scott and myself have been reporting more incidents of fly tipping than ever before, which strongly suggests there has been a notable rise. Since the closure of Nab Lane waste site in November 24, what increase, if any, has been recorded in the levels of fly tipping in Dewsbury?
Thank you, Councillor Moore. In terms of the actual sort of fly tipping, that does sit in Councillor Pinnock's portfolio. I think the best way I try and distinguish that, if it's disposed of legally, it's in the waste portfolio, and if it's disposed of illegally, it's in the environment portfolio. That's a good sort of rule of thumb there. But in terms of sort of just an approach, we are working with Keep Britain Tidy at the moment as well to develop a strategy for tackling the more rampant fly tipping we are seeing, because it's not just Kirklees that's affected by that. We have seen that across the country, and it does, something I'm dubbing a bit the 3 E's is what is really needed. Better, stronger enforcement, more education in our communities, and enhancing the waste offer that we've got available to us. Within the waste portfolio, I think you're seeing some of that already, the disposal of DIY materials that can now happen at your household waste and recycling centres. Coming to the Cabinet in September, it's been pushed back a little bit, but you'll see it a bit in the papers as well about the simpler recycling legislation that's coming in, and that's all about making sure that people are disposing of their waste, both at the recycling centres that are available and in the bins at home and not on the side of the streets. So with regards to the particular query around fly tipping, I'm sure I'll work with Councillor Pinnock and get a response to you there, but in terms of what we're doing in waste, I hope I've outlined a bit of the work that's got happening there.
Councillor Pinnock, do you want to come back on that?
No, I don't think so. I think my colleagues dealt with that quite well. Thank you.
Supplementary, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. So, if there has been any increase in fly tipping across Dewsbury, what have been the cost implications? Specifically, what are the additional costs incurred by the Council in the last 6 months as a result of dealing with these incidents, and how are these offset by the savings generated from the closure of Nab Lane?
Shall I ask Councillor Pinnock to answer that? Or
I think we captured that. I think that was a pre-prepared one, so it's sort of our response is sort of very much the same. I myself and Councillor Pinnock will work together and get a response back to you on that, as I've done in this meeting already on the other query, and we'll get that information as quick as we can, quicker than I was last time.
Councillor Taylor, you've got another question.
This is for Councillor Hawkins. I'm a member of the Waste Strategy Working Group. We had meetings put in diaries this year, then cancelled. And when I queried it, it was explained that they wanted to talk to Overview and Scrutiny Management first before putting them back in. But I've heard nothing since. So what's happening with the Waste Strategy Working Group that's been a cross-party group that's been working for a number of years, and it just seems to have, I don't know, I just don't understand why we've not got any meetings planned.
No, thank you for flagging that with me, Councillor Taylor. As I say, I'll get you a answer to that query later today as well.
No supplementary from Councillor Taylor, thank you. Any more questions? You've got about 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Councillor Bramwell.
At the last Cabinet meeting I attended, I raised Dewsbury Moor End Lane, and Councillor Crook responded, don't know if he recalls, and he said that he would be looking into this. I've received an email that he's making inquiries and no update as such. I would like to move forward. I've met with housing officers since I met with yourself. I've also met with Safe Kirklees, and we're more than happy to move forward as, I don't know what the face is for, move forward with a cohesive approach to deal with this, but I am awaiting an official response from you, because you did say you'd be looking into this.
Thank you, Councillor Bramwell. I am looking into it. The email has been open on my desktop ever since last Cabinet meeting, and I've chased it up with officers. The reason I raised an eyebrow when you spoke about Safer Kirklees officers, I think the basis of your inquiry was about maintenance of a path, and I don't think Safer undertake ground maintenance. But I am still chasing it up. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes some time to get a full response to people. As far as I can identify from the map, you're talking about a sort of a snicket between the road and the main recreational area. So, we've got to first define who owns that and then look at any maintenance requirements. As far as I could see, though, there was a path in place that was, navigable by people on foot. So I don't know whether it would be I don't know what level of maintenance you'd be expecting to happen there, but if the path is usable, that's the first step in my view. But I'm still following up on it.
Supplementary, Councillor Bramwell.
The reason why Safe Kirklees are involved is because we've had a number of issues in that area when it comes to antisocial behaviour in young people. Because it's so overgrown, there's things being left within there, and that's why we've also consulted with West Yorkshire Police. When you talk about the footpath in itself, like I told you at the last cabinet meeting, there is no footpath anymore. And according to my housing officers, they state it's not been maintained in 5 to 6 years, and no one can give an explanation as to why.
Thank you. So I can't speak to historical maintenance of a piece of ground. As I say, the first thing to ascertain is whether that piece of ground is vested with Homes and Neighbourhoods or whether it's general council property, and in which case whether there is a maintenance obligation on that piece of ground or whether it's just habitually used by local residents as a cut through or something like that. So it's all very well you saying there is, but I need that verifying by officers before I can... I can only follow up on an inquiry once I've verified land ownership. As I've said, I don't really see the advantage of you second guessing that. I will get back to you, as I said.
Okay, that is the end of the time allowed for questions from elected members. So I'll move on to the rest of the agenda. And the first item is the item 8 is Council Financial Outturn and Rollover Report 24-25. Over to Graham Turner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As those of you who read today's agenda will realise, this is an extremely long, detailed, lengthy report, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. This report provides information on the Council's financial outturn position for general fund revenue, housing revenue account, the HRA, and capital plan. It seeks cabinet approval of the creation of strategic budget contingency reserve, capital rollover proposals, and the reserve and capital rollover proposals. Key points from this report is the general fund. They had an improved revenue outturn position with a £5.6 million overspend, which is down from 9.9 at quarter 3. Reserves, year-end reserves and balances of 61 million, with the general reserve remaining at 25 million, which is as low as we should absolutely go. Capital outturn position of 140.6 million for 24-25, with 13.7 capital slippage to 25-26. HRA had an underspend of 1.3 million, with the year-end reserves balance of 30.6. I must thank Kevin and his team for preparing this report and providing the level of detail contained within the plan. As is now the norm, it was a challenging year for the Council financially, as we saw rising demand across many services and for a variety of reasons, but strict control of budgets by officers across the Council ensured we finished the year with a slight overspend of £5.6 million. Of course, we would have all preferred to have come in on budget, but given quite high inflation and increased demand, as I mentioned, we were where we were early in the year, where we had a significantly higher predicted overspend. I believe this is a reasonable position to be in the year end. The overspend represents approximately 1.5% of the revenue budget. Going forward, capital receipts will support the Council's budget and reduce long-term revenue commitments. We will come on to some of that a bit later on. And disposal of surplus assets will reduce maintenance liabilities and contribute to savings, thus supporting the revenue budget. Chair, can I ask the Cabinet to accept this report before us and approve recommendations, creation of strategic budget contingency reserve with a balance of 3.5 mil, approve 13.7 capital slippage from 24-25 to 25-26, and note the improved revenue outturn position and year-end reserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I will second that report. Any questions or comments from anyone? Councillor Scott.
Chair, so my comment is that, but it's about, within that report, it talks about Buxton House, and it's stalled after a failed procurement process. The developers have also pulled out of other estate building schemes. Isn't this clear evidence that the current regeneration model is broken? It is not working. I have a supplementary. Do you want me just to read that on as well so it can keep it condensed? It's entirely up to you, Graham.
Please.
Okay, so within that report, it states about Buxton House has stalled after a failed procurement process. Developers have also pulled out of the estate building scheme, which was established not long ago. Isn't this clear evidence that the current regeneration model is broken? It's simply not working.
Thank you for that question. So let's look at estate buildings first. So estate buildings, as we well know, is a great two-listed building. Very old, extremely interesting architecturally. We spent some money last year, not last year, the year before, from a government fund to make it wind and watertight. That work was completed. We were in negotiations with a registered provider around providing units in there. Unfortunately, the cost of dealing with this historic building meant that they couldn't stack it up from their business plan. So we drew from that negotiations. It was a commercial decision. The amount of money needed to bring that into use, into flats, for instance, there was what we call a gap. There was a gap in funding. That couldn't be matched by either the council with our limited resources or the registered provider we were talking to. So we've got £1.3 million being spent on it at this moment in time through the one public estate, which is enabling works, which will enable us to then go to the market later this year. I think there's a report not long since where this building will then we will go out to the market, and we may well sell it for a less than best consideration. Funnily enough, I had 2 phone calls yesterday from potential developers asking me when this may come to the market. So there is interest at the moment in time around estate buildings. Again, it will depend on the costs associated and what the expected rents or sale price of those properties will be. But we are continually working to try and get estate buildings back into play. Buxton House is an HRA project, and whilst I'm aware of some of the details, I'm not across every minutiae of that because, as I say, it's an HRA project.
I'm happy to just pick that up quickly. The procurement process that was underway for Buxton House didn't result in a successful tender. That's for the work. That's absolutely right. I think that's part of a shift in both the construction industry and the backdrop to social housing provision over the last few years. It does, however, give us an opportunity to review the process and the tendering for that, and then go back to market at some time in the hopefully not too distant future. Thank you.
And I will just add to that I think neither of those examples proves or shows that the regeneration model is broken. So, sorry, did you include your supplementary? Supplementary, Councillor Scott.
I asked today, will Cabinet commit to a full review of the regeneration and governance delivery and its capacity? You created a 3.5 million reserve to cover risks not foreseen in March 2025. Was the 2025-26 budget already unrealistic?
Councillor Turner.
I don't think the 25-26 budget is unrealistic. It was well costed out. It was well thought out. It was approved by council after a long evening, shall we say. So we have a budget in place, as I said, that has been approved by council. So no, I don't think it's unrealistic. There will always be challenges around regeneration. We're not the only local authority that's currently trying to regenerate our town centres. It's going up and down the country. We've seen a shift away from retail in town centres. Approximately 31% of all retail is now done online, so you can't expect town centres to be the same as they were pre-internet. That's simply unrealistic and naive in the minimum, shall we say. So we have to change town centres. As I said, we're not the only ones doing this. If you look up and down the country, there's huge amount of shopping centres closing. I think Bradford closed 2 last week or the week before. So regeneration is about reflecting that change and changing the town centres to reflect what people more look for in a town centre, and that is more entertainment. They want something to do, and it's Generation Z, as they call them, that now don't spend as much time going out drinking, etc. And they look for alternative things to do with town. Hence why we invested in the light. Hence why the light has been so far. and I can't imagine why it wouldn't. It's been a roaring success, and that was a positive investment. So we're changing the town centres, as I say. This is happening all over the country. So no, I don't believe our regeneration project is broken. I believe we're absolutely heading in the right direction, and I look forward to much more investment as capital becomes more and more available, hopefully with the introduction of more money for local government through the current government. And I believe that Huddersfield, Dewsbury and many of our smaller town centres have a great future ahead of them with our investments.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, you have a comment?
Yeah, I've got a couple of points, if I may, Graham. And again, I echo your comments to the team that prepared this as well. In 3.2.17, you don't need to go to it. It talks about the underspending central budgets, contingencies. So what was the impact of that? So if we've underspent on contingencies, was it that we overestimated them in the first place? Or are there services that perhaps have suffered because we haven't used those contingencies to help manage the plan? I've got a couple of other bits. Do you want me to do them all or do them one at a time?
Councillor Turner, do you want to say?
Go crack on.
All right. 3.2.118. It talks about saying that one of the things we're doing this year is, or we're doing last year, sorry, apologies, is stopping expenditure not deemed to be critical to service delivery. I understood at least 2 years ago we made a declaration that we were stopping all non-essential spend. So that commentary suggests that we didn't. So had we stopped non-essential spend when you said you were stopping non-essential spend, presumably this overspend would have been smaller and would have been smaller in the previous year. And I've made this point a number of times, both at Cabinet Council and through Corporate Governance and Audit, my concern about whether really officers are fully understanding the impact of the challenges we face and therefore are questioning whether spend is needed or not. And this comment in this report kind of suggests that we haven't got there. We talked about stopping non-essential spend, and we're still talking about stopping non-essential spend. My third point, 3.2.26, you don't need to look them up really. It talks about the capital plan. The capital plan, when the budget was set out, was 340.8 million. The outturn was 140.6 million, which is significantly smaller. Now, obviously, there have been changes through the year, but this is a time for reflection and go, how did we get it so wrong in the first place? Because obviously, by putting that amount in the budget in the first place, we obviously had to put the revenue impact of that in the budget in the first place. So again, what reflections are we taking from that? Because we've got an ambitious capital plan again, and is that right or is it wrong? What lessons have we learned? How confident are we we're not going to get another year where we've got a significant underspend again in the capital plan, which again has compromised our ability to spend on other services because we've put the revenue aside for the potential interest impact of those. I'll leave it at that, if that's all right, Graham.
So we'll start with the capital. You're right, we underspend, but in all the years I've been here, we have never ever spent all our capital, and there's always a number of reasons in that. Sometimes projects take longer to come to fruition. Sometimes we find complication with sometimes simply finding companies to do the work for us. So there's a whole host of reasons. But you're right, we do allow for that, and we didn't deliver again. But as I said, traditionally we never have. But reflecting on that, what Kevin's team is doing at this moment in time, and we were having a quick chat before we started, is we are going through the entire capital plan, looking at every single line in that, and me and Kevin are going to sit down in September and go through that and look at what's realistic, what may be in there that's been around a long time that we may not need to do or we can't do for other reasons. So we are doing a full review of that capital plan. And as I say, Kevin and I have got it set aside sometime in September to go through that. So that hopefully will deal with that. I think with the best will in the world, no matter how clever you are, no matter how much foresight you put in, it's always difficult to know what's going to happen with the capital plan because, as I said, there's so many mitigating factors. You know, we aren't great in this country at delivering capital projects. You want to look around, you'd have to go very far to look at massive mistakes that's been made with capital plans. So it's not our forte in this country for some reason. But as I said, Kevin and I are going to do his absolute best to make sure that the capital plan in future is more realistic to where we need to be. And even then, I still think we will always have projects that are difficult to deliver. You only need to build in that find out it needs a lot more work or more design work that gets delayed. So we do our best, but as I said, we don't deliver on capital, as I said, but we never have done, whoever's been in charge of the council, so we will look at that. I think the reference to critical spending is there permanently, and it's to remind officers that we should ensure that any money spent is critical, and we do need to do that. So I don't think it's a reflection of what we've done before, because we've brought the overspend down through the hard work of officers this year and last year. So I think that's just in there to remind people that they should constantly look at what they're spending their money on. What was the other one?
Were the
contingencies. I don't know the exact detail, but you're possibly right. Perhaps set them perhaps a little bit too ambitious with putting too much money in the contingencies. Something I'm more than happy to have a conversation with Kevin about. But considering that those services, most of those services actually delivered, it clearly didn't have a huge impact on the outturn of delivery of services.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Graham. I think you're perhaps being a bit too, I'm not sure what the right word is, optimistic possibly. I've talked about the capital plan over the years, both through corporate governance and audit, both through when we had a corporate scrutiny as well, about the fact that every year the capital plan slipped. And every year, and you're absolutely right, it is almost impossible to get right. Because, as you outlined, there are always reasons why things may not proceed at the pace you wanted them to proceed, for a whole variety of reasons, I agree. But when you set out a year with a budget and you end up delivering less than half of it, that is a huge difference. A huge difference, and a huge difference it will have had on the revenue budgets when we set the budget in the first place if we got it right. And we have made some tough decisions, and you talked about savings have had to be made. Those savings have had to be made because we expected to spend more in capital than we did. So if we continue year after year getting it wrong, and we've got it wrong by more than 50%, that's meaning we're not delivering key services for people because we've had to find savings to make the budget balance when actually the budget would have balanced if we'd got a realistic capital plan in the first place. Similarly, on the contingencies, if we overstated the contingencies, again, that's an impact on the amount of money we had available to spend on essential services. And whilst you say services have been delivered, as I'm sure all members here present today know, on a daily basis we're saying no to people about things people want because there isn't the funding available. So when we get the budget wrong like this, that's the impact of it. It's saying no to somebody somewhere about something that they may want. It may be they want some improvement to their road for road safety. It may be an elderly person that wants some help with adaptions or social care or whatever it may be. But, it may well end up with an impact. And the bit about stopping expenditure...
Councillor Taylor,
yeah.
Is this a supplementary or
it's a response to what Graham said, to be fair.
You seem to be, you're over your time, and you seem to be
I'll stop.
Reiterating what you said earlier. That's
and I am reiterating. I feel Graham underplayed it.
Right. Well, thank you.
And It's difficult because I'm optimistic by nature, John. So it is challenging, and I like to think that my glass is half full, not half empty. So when we look at these things, yes, I'd like to deliver all these things, but I say, sorry? Well, capital plan didn't deliver, but as I say, it's not unusual, and that's no excuse. It's just it is never been delivered fully by, as I said, in the history of Kirklees, I don't remember it ever being delivered, whoever's been in charge. It's always challenging. And you're right, to a degree that has an impact on the revenue budget, but also what it does is it means the following year that money can be freed up in the following years because it's not been spent, in effect. It's almost playing wooden dollars, isn't it? The money's still there, it's just not been spent on that. And we haven't paid perhaps as much interest as we would normally by prudential borrowing. So the money's still there, we could just roll that into next year's planning, obviously. But as I say, we are going to sit down and go through the capital plan, and we will be robust. And anything that's in there that shouldn't be in there, that's been around a long time, because there will be things in there that times have changed that we can't deliver or don't need to deliver, perhaps, we will remove from that. So, yes, next year's capital plan will be in a better place than this capital plan, but will we spend it all? I very much doubt.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Turner. You've moved this and I've seconded it. Can I see all those in favour of it, please? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Q4 24-25 Council Plan and Performance Update Report. I will present and move the recommendation here. This is, as I said, the Q4 24-25 Performance Plan and Performance Update Report, and it is the fourth quarter, obviously, of a new type of report that we've used this last year, which has provided not just the executive, but the cabinet and scrutiny and other committees with an update against all of the 4 council plan priorities, the 24-25 council key measures, updates against those council measures in the appendix, and also in the appendix, updates against the shared outcomes population outcome indicators. So, I mean, the council key measures reflect and represent the most critical and important areas of the council with consideration of the council's strategic priorities for 24-25, the council's transformation programmes and the council's statutory functions and responsibilities, and the council's regulatory requirements, risks to the council, and obviously council's resources in terms of its finance and people. Throughout the year, it has been reviewed at each quarter, and data has been made available. So the cabinet is here. It's here for noting or to consider this report in relation to the council plan deliverables. And it provides an update, as I've already said, on the performance against those key council measures. And those key council measures are important in as far as they do enable us to effectively monitor performance and drive further improvements. So, I mean, that's all I have to say. Can I have a seconder for that report, please? Thank you, Councillor Crook. Any comments? Councillor Taylor?
You'd be disappointed if I didn't. There are two areas I just want to talk about. And the first one's strategic housing. So there's comments in the report about the delays to Dewsbury Riverside and to Bradley Park. Both of these are large-scale proposals that were in the local plan that haven't really seen spades in the ground yet. We've failed as a council to bring these forward as quickly as we ought to have done. I've come this morning from a public consultation by a developer that's trying to build on Greenbelt in one of my villages, 120 houses. He's quoting these as an example of Kirklees' failure. So he's saying that you've got these big sites, but you haven't brought them forward yet. That's why you've got a lack of supply of housing. That's why we can bring forward Greenbelt sites. So I know the challenges, I understand the challenges, but we put these in a plan back in 2018-19, and we're, what, 5-6 years later, we still haven't got a spade in ground. So when we're talking about corporate performance, that's got to be, you know, a poor performance, and one that has consequences, because it could put at risk developments elsewhere because of this. Do you want me to do the two areas or do one at a time?
Sorry, Councillor. I mean, I think Councillor Turner can take those together. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Let Councillor Turner
So, don't forget that when the local plan was introduced in 2019, it was a 15-year plan. And you're absolutely right. We haven't laid a spade in the ground at Bradley Park or at Dewsbury Riverside. But Dewsbury Riverside, for instance, is an extremely complicated site because it's not one land ownership, it's multiple landowners. So there's lots of negotiations about who's going to sell the land, who's going to buy it, etc. Also, the access is incredibly complicated. We had allotments in the way. We are in ongoing negotiations because we need to move away mosque and playgroup. So whilst we haven't actually physically put a spade in the ground, there's an awful lot of work, and I just pay tribute to the officers. This is an incredibly complicated site, but it is moving forward at pace now. So we've got the new allotments a couple of years ago, where I say we're in constant negotiation with the mosque and children's centre, and we are hopeful that before the end of this year, we will appoint a master developer, because it's clear that because the land ownership is in so many different hands, we need someone to come in, take an overview and become the master developer, and that will enable them to split it up and work with different developers, because it's unlikely, given the size of it, you will find one developer who will be prepared to invest the amount of money that is needed in this. So it'll allow the master developer to start parcelling pieces of land up and working with either SMEs or the bigger boys in the housing market. We are in constant negotiations with Homes England. We need a significant investment from Homes England to gain access to this site, and those negotiations, we believe, will bear fruit again in the next few months, and we'll free that money up. Despite the fact we haven't done anything, don't forget it was a 15-year plan, and we will probably build it before the 15 years is up, despite the fact we now, as we'll come on to later, redoing the local plan. And you're right about what I would call some developers believing that this is an opportunity to go into the green belt. Despite the fact we only have a 3.5-year land supply for homes, I don't believe that is enough to demonstrate special circumstances for these people who are applying in the green belt. And we will well have to test that at appeal, but I don't believe that 3.5-year land supply is enough to demonstrate special circumstances in the green belt. So, as I say, Dewsbury Riverside complicated, but it is moving forward. Bradley Park, likewise, incredibly complicated. We had some access issues around there with some, careful what I say, some ownership issues around some access points to that, which, again, we are working through, and it's hoped that we can bring that towards the market later this year. So again, work ongoing on that site. So a bit slower than we'd anticipated, I accept, but these big sites, it's incredibly complicated when you've got multiple owners, access issues, TRU going on at the back of it with a brand new station. But as I said, we are optimistic we'll have a master developer. We have people talking to us about being the master developer, so it's not that nobody wants to get involved, they absolutely do. So, but I'm confident that both these sites will see significant movement by the end of this year.
Councillor Taylor, I'm stretching our procedure rules here and letting you have a second bite of the cherry, but you did offer to actually ask both questions in the on this issue.
So to be fair, my other questions are on a different issue, but just to say to Graham, I mean, I fully understand what he's saying, but we need to make sure in the next local plan that we've got the timing right, because if it's going to take an awful long time, they got it wrong in the last plan. But the other issue was on highways. So, yeah, that'll be Councillor Hawkins, won't it? Oh, good. All I would say, this is time for reflection, isn't it? You were looking back at performance. That's what this plan is. When I look at the measures on highways, all of the ones around road maintenance are red. All the ones on road maintenance, you know, the percentage of unclassified roads considered red for maintenance, you know, 28%. The number of B and C roads considered red for maintenance, gone from 2.6 to 4.2 to 6.3. Everything's trending in the wrong direction. And again, you know, representing one of the geographically bigger wards, it's the joy that means I've got lots of unclassified roads and B and C roads. So this is something that I deal with on a daily basis. And we're not getting it right. And we did put, you know, as part of the Conservative amendment, we did put more money into roads into the budget for future years. But it's something we need to reflect on about how can we get better at this, because clearly we're failing our residents.
Councillor Hawkins, or
Broadly speaking, I agree, John. I really do. I think it's, you know, whilst the Conservative amendment was certainly welcome for the extra funding, and whilst over years we have received periodically extra funding from governments of both Conservative and Labour leaning, the scale of the problem is truly massive, and it has only grown, certainly over the past 14 years, and a lack of funding that we've been receiving to address that issue. We have the statutory duty which prioritises children's services, adult social care, rightly, but the problem we've seen, certainly on our road maintenance and on unclassified roads, has just grown over the years, very much so. So any resource we can get, be it through amendments or from central government, is greatly welcomed. But again, this report lays clear the scale of the problem that we are facing, and we are certainly not alone in that. That is sector-wide for local government.
thank you. Councillor Taylor, have you got a supplementary?
Comment. It was the point I was making earlier about because we got our assumptions wrong in the budget, it meant there wasn't money available. If we were underspending the capital plan, we could have thought about using some of that capital to invest in our roads. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Just to add, we have got breaking news here that the government are putting £92 billion into delivering England's biggest transport infrastructure for a generation. Say, breaking news on my phone. So that should go, hopefully, some way to meeting that. Across the country, not just for Kirklees. I obviously moved that report. Councillor Crook has seconded it. Can I see those in favour, please? Thank you. Okay, right, now moving on to the next item, which again I've gone and lost, thank you, is the Corporate Risk Report, Quarter 4, 24-25, and over to Councillor Turner.
Chair, thank you. So this is the summary position of the risk register. So we've identified no new risks identified. So there's no risk removed or raised or removed this quarter. So the risk score changes. So there's really no increase in risk scores. There's a reduction in risk scores for budget and monitoring and management, medium financial term stability, adult safeguarding. Some key risk updates, significant progress in stabilising the Council's financial position, stability achieved with the 25-26 budget, but long-term financial gaps remain, which we all know about in effect. So there's an improved oversight and governance in adult safeguarding, reducing the likelihood of risk materialising. AHO2 and AHO3 to be reconsidered following the CQC visit in quarter 1, 25-26. So the risk overview, the high risk areas are the medium-term financial stability, talent management, cyber security, which is an international issue, so it is something we keep a constant eye on. Contract management, SEM provision, again, a national issue that we're tackling. Homeless and housing stock availability, again, we may mention this later on. Housing safety and quality, again, something that's ongoing, again, it may get mentioned later on. Moderate risk areas, budget monitoring and management, capital plan management, data integrity, information governance and procurement processes. So the controls and actions of budget monitoring continue focus on effective governance and savings targets, medium-term financial stability, sustainability, ongoing review and monitoring financial plans and reserves, capital plan management, quarterly reprofiling, monitoring the capital plan, John, talent management, active management of recruitment and retention of staff with a focus on reducing agency staff. We constantly try and grow our own. We constantly try and keep the best talent we have, because we have some incredibly talented and dedicated officers, and we must do all we can to maintain them. But also we must grow our own, and we've seen huge success over the years in certain parts of the organisation in actually doing that. So, Chair, can I ask Cabinet to note this report today?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I will second that. I believe, Councillor Taylor, you've got a question, comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm putting my hat on as Chair of Corporate Governance and Audit in this comment, really, just to let Cabinet members know that obviously as Corporate Governance and Audit, we have a responsibility for assuring the Council that risks are managed appropriately. It's always been a bit of a challenge for Corporate Governance and Audit, because we're responsible for ensuring that the process around risks is correct, but we're not actually responsible for scrutinising the risks, which has always been a bit of a debate. But what we are doing at our meeting, I think in September, is we are going to take 2 of these risks off this plan. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which 2 we agreed, but we did agree to. And we're going to look in a bit more detail at how the process has worked to give ourselves, and through us, give you the assurance that risk management at that level is working appropriately. But just from my own perspective and my previous role as Chair of Corporate Scrutiny, I've seen vast improvements in the way we manage these risks as well. So it's full credit to the team that are doing it as well. So it's just a comment, really, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Turner, do you want to respond?
Just to thank John for his kind words and for the support for the officers. And I actually think it's a good idea that you have a look at these 2, pick a couple at random and have a deep dive into that. Was really helpful, because obviously you'll have the time to do that. Obviously, whilst we go through this in great detail, a really deep dive is not really possible given the size of the risk register. But I welcome that, and I welcome your feedback once you've done that. It'll be really useful, I think.
Thank you. I presume from what you just said there's no supplementary to that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Turner has moved that. I've seconded it. Sorry. Sorry? Okay. Can we note it, please? Yes. All right, thank you. I'll move on to the next item, which is the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge Progress Annual, the Action Plan Progress Report. The Corporate Peer, LGA Corporate Peer Challenge Report and the Action Plan is something that's been well aired in different places across the Council, with the at Cabinet, at Council, and at Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But I'm pleased to bring this progress report here on how far we have got with the action plan. You will see that out of the 42 recommendations, actions to the in response to the 8 recommendations that the LGA set us, all bar 1 are on track. 1 has been completed, and another 8 are expected to be completed by the time that the peer review team come back in September. So good progress is being made on those recommendations. They're set out here in the appendix. I don't intend to sort of go through it all, but this report is for noting, but I will move it, and Councillor Crook will second that. Any comments on this report? No? Okay, thank you. Well, it is for noting, so thank you. We will move on to the next item, which is the Kirklees Inclusive Economy Strategy, and this is back to Graham Turner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and this is not for noting. So the report, this report presents the Kirklees Inclusive Economic Strategy which we're seeking endorsement by the Cabinet today and subsequent approval by the full Council on the 16th of July 2025. This strategy aligns with the West Yorkshire Local Growth Plan and the UK Modern Industrial Strategy. It's a partnership approach. It's framed as a partnership strategy, emphasising collaboration with business and economic partners. It's strategically important. It's a final top-tier strategy, complementing the Inclusive Communities Framework, Health and Wellbeing Strategy and Environment Strategy. So the objectives of the plan is productive, inclusive and sustainable economy. We aim to develop a local economy that is both productive, inclusive and environmentally sustainable. We look for local and regional growth. We support local economic growth that aligns with regional and national strategies. It establishes a platform for engagement with businesses and economic partners to identify growth, skills and investment opportunities. It focuses on creating an environmentally sustainable local economy aligned with net zero targets. So, following today's Cabinet decision, should Cabinet accept this, this will move on to be discussed in detail in full Council in the 16th of July. So, Chair, can I ask Cabinet to accept this report today?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. You've moved that. I will second it. And Councillor Moore, you've got a question.
Thank you. I've two questions on this. The first one is, in the report it states our diverse network of larger towns, Huddersfield and Dewsbury, and local centres like Batley, Cleckheaton, Heckmondwike, Holmfirth and Marsden are evolving as centres for shopping, leisure and community activity. However, at present, Dewsbury has virtually no retail offer. This is one of the key reasons, alongside concerns about personal safety, why large numbers of people have stopped coming to the town. As part of the inclusion economic strategy for Kirklees, what specific plans and discussions have taken place to attract new businesses, particularly in the retail sector, back into Dewsbury to give shoppers a reason to come into the town? Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, for the question. You're absolutely right. The retail offer in Dewsbury is not fantastic at the moment, but as I said earlier, 31% of all retail is now done online, so that has an impact on all our town centres. What we need to do in Dewsbury is revive that town centre. To that end, the Dewsbury Arcade is on construction and should be finished later this year, subject to the complications we found when they started work on that. So that will bring into about 20 odd units back into Dewsbury. We believe that will kickstart the revitalisation of that shopping area. I think we published it this week. The plans to revamp the market are now moving forward, so we'll decant the market into temporary accommodation while we revamp the market, and that will, in future, once that's finished, attract people back into the town centre. There is investment, I understand, from going into what was the old Wilco building. So the private sector are already looking to reinvest in Dewsbury and increase that retail offer. So through the new neighbourhood board, we will continue to seek out investment opportunities for Dewsbury. But as I say, I believe once we get the arcade open, get the new market in the next 2 or 3 years, we will see a different Dewsbury to what we see now.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, have you got a supplementary? But also, in the same way as I allowed Councillor Taylor to have 2 bites of the cherry, I will allow you. So I'm not sure if you're going to come back with a supplementary. Or
I've got a supplementary to
okay.
that. A recent YouTube video filmed on Saturday shows Dewsbury in a state of decline, highlighting widespread street drinking and streets lined with boarded up shops and neglected buildings. What plans for stronger enforcement and community safety are built into the current strategy? And more importantly, how do you intend to tackle the reputational damage Dewsbury has suffered and begin restoring confidence in the town? Thank you.
Thank you for the supplementary. I'll tell you I'm going to try and improve it by talking it up, not talking it down. As I said earlier, the police will tell you, if you ask Jim, will tell you that the crime rate is no higher in Dewsbury than elsewhere. The perception of crime is great, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to get that perception of crime changed in people's mindsets. As I said, the investment in the arcade, the new market, as someone mentioned earlier on, the investment around the town hall that's ongoing, all these things are designed to get people back into Dewsbury. Through, as I said earlier, the work of the neighbourhood board, we'll be looking at how we can improve the security of Dewsbury, and as I said, there's 25% of that money is available to be spent on improvement of safety. Don't forget, some of these issues are beyond our control because they are controlled by the police, and they direct their own budgets and their own workforce into areas where they want to concentrate. So some of it is working with is the police, but we work very closely with the police. As I said, Jim sits on the neighbourhood board, so yes, absolutely, we will be looking at how we can improve the outcome for Dewsbury, not only by investing in the buildings and the retail offer, but how we can make it people actually feel safer. And that work is ongoing and will continue into the future. So, but as I said, right at the beginning of this, let's talk it up, not talk it down.
And on that point, I would just say I too saw a YouTube video over the weekend and of Dewsbury, and it was full of life, of people enjoying the town centre, shops, and there were no pictures of street drinkers, etc., etc. I'm not saying they weren't there, but there's always two sides, isn't there? And you have to be careful what you look at on YouTube. Anyway, Councillor Scott, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is, because it's been brought into the conversation, is about the Dewsbury market traders. Now, it's worrying times and unsettling times, and I do believe that we did engage before with the traders and got them to sign up to the new vision of where we were taking Dewsbury. However, it's been brought to our attention that there's new agreements that they're being asked to sign up to, and some of the traders, despite assurances that they would be offered pitches and places, they're now being told that's not happening. So it's very worrying. Can we have your reassurance that you will go back to these market traders and it's all inclusive? Because when you're setting your strategy and your economy and things like that, you need the traders in order for this to happen. And what we can't have is you doing to them rather than working with them. It's just an assurance, Graham.
Councillor Turner?
Ironically, I had a briefing only last week with the team delivering the Dewsbury market, and they assured me that the new plans, all the traders were involved in the conversation around how that was going to work, where the new units were going to be, how many units we needed. So they're heavily involved in the process of going forward. And that was said, that was out of a briefing only last week.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, you've got a question.
Thank you, Graham. A couple of questions, really. Comments. So 3 comments for him to comment on, really. It talks about the engagement in developing this strategy, but councillors seem to have been missed out again. So they're not listed or mentioned there. And certainly I've had no engagement in it. It went to the scrutiny panel, but that's all. So that's one comment. You mentioned direct train links to Manchester and to Leeds, but forget to mention direct train links to Sheffield. You do mention the Penistone line at different points, but at the very beginning in the summary, you talk about direct train links. There is a direct train link to Sheffield. And if we're positioning ourselves as in the centre of that triangle that I always talk about being equidistant between the 3 major conurbations, we need to be consistent in our messaging. And it always worries me that it's always the Penistone line, it's always looking south that gets forgotten. And you would expect me to raise it. And again, on a similar point, when we talk about demographics and it talks about Kirklees being a net labour exporter, again, it doesn't recognise the fact that certainly in my patch, and I'm sure it's the same in Councillor Crook's, we have lots of people that also commute to Manchester and to Sheffield. But all it talks about is Leeds and Bradford. So again, I do worry about whether we're looking holistically at the whole of Kirklees or we're missing parts of it out in this in this strategy. And again, had you come and talked to all councillors, you can guarantee I would have raised issues like this, because I've got consistency for doing that. So, over to you, Graham.
If our proposals aren't engaged with councillors significantly, then perhaps that's something we can ensure we don't do in the future. There's been a huge amount of work in this, and it's in some ways it's mainly a refresh of the old policy anyways, but there's still been a huge amount of work involved because of the tying it in with the inclusive strategy of West Yorkshire. And as I say, if you feel councillors have been missed out, I apologise for that, and it's something we'll take away and make sure that when we do next year's or the year after, whenever we refresh it, that we take that in board. You're right about the Penistone line, John. Without playing top trumps, I've been talking about the Penistone line for a significant number of years, probably since not long after it got ripped up and went to single track in effect. You're right, it is in there, and perhaps we should have put it a bit more front and centre, but as it stands at the moment, it's very unreliable and it's not great, and that's why I'm optimistic that the outline business case that's been prepared at the moment will allow the flow of money, the 40-odd million that's promised by government, into that to improve that service, because you're absolutely right, it's a vital link from Huddersfield to Sheffield. Sheffield is a growing area of advanced manufacturing, which is the area that we're looking at getting involved in more and more. So that link into that is really important. Plus, it takes you into what I call the West Coast lands. It takes you down to the heart of Cornwall and Devon, etc., which is a popular area for people to transport down. So it is important. You're absolutely right. Perhaps I should have just put it in there a bit more, at the front, shall we say, a bit more emphasis on it. But we haven't forgotten it. It is in there, and I wouldn't let it get forgotten, because, as I say, I've been campaigning on that for a significant number of years. It would be. We could actually do a huge piece of work and analyse where everybody in Kirklees works, but that would take into account Bradford, Leeds, Manchester, Sheffield. You know, some people working in Selby and Hull and all over the place. So we could do that, but that would take an awful lot of time. But the main areas for people within Kirklees is Leeds or Bradford. So I think that's why we included that, without spending hours and hours analysing where absolutely everybody works. The main focus is Leeds and Bradford, and that's why that's in there really. Because I say we don't want to. You spend hours and hours analysing what is relatively small amounts of people moving around. So take on board your point about the Penistone line, and in future years I will ensure that we engage with councillors a little bit more than we have done this time, shall we say.
Can I just add to what you just said, Councillor Turner, that certainly myself and Councillor Crook, whenever we are at any meeting or partnership meeting or board or whatever it might be, where it's relevant, we do mention the Penistone line. We always make sure that it's there. We do certainly recognise that the need for that transport link. And just in terms of the engagement, there are various, and it's in the report at item 5, there have been various places where this has been in front of councillors over the last 2 years, and it's taken that long to sort of come to fruition, I suppose we could say. But there's all sorts of different places, but the last 2 places it went to were the Health and Wellbeing Board in January and the Growth and Regeneration Scrutiny Panel in December. It's also been to the Health and Care Partnership, the Partnership Executive, Health and Care Partnership Development Session, Growth and Regen Scrutiny Panel again, picture of Kirklees, Community Senior Management Team, okay, there's no members there, I presume, Inclusion and Diversity Hub, and the Tackling Inequalities Partnership Board. So we have tried to include lots of different partners in producing this strategy, but yes, I'm always happy to have members' involvement, and it's something perhaps that could have gone round to groups. Okay, noted, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Moore, you wanted to ask a question? Could
I just come back at Graham when he said talking the town down? For the record, I'm not talking the town down, Graham. I'm pointing out some underlying problems that exist, some are quite serious, and asking for a more ambitious approach from Kirklees. But anyway, my question is, recently we organised a trip from Chickenley Community Centre to the Peace Hall in Halifax. People were truly inspired by what they saw, an incredible space that brings people together and draws visitors into the town. Many on the trip were asking, why can't we have something like this in Dewsbury? While I'm not suggesting we recreate the Peace Hall, my question is this: where is the bold, ambitious vision for Dewsbury, something on the scale of Huddersfield's 250 million cultural art project that will genuinely attract people back into the town and put Dewsbury back on the map?
You've actually had that's your second question, so we'll leave it at that. If sorry.
Well, you haven't got a Peace Hall in Dewsbury, so that's really, really challenging. And despite the fact that the Peace Hall is a fantastic historic listed building, unfortunately, at this moment in time, it still requires a substantial amount of subsidies from the local council, which I know they are struggling to maintain. Their investments for Dewsbury are affordable. They will improve the footfall. They will include improve the retail offer. And as I said, they are affordable. And regeneration doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while. As I said earlier, we're already seeing private investments started coming back into Dewsbury. We've seen the investment in the bowling alley and new supermarkets are evolving. So, yes, we can't recreate the Peace Hall because it hasn't got one. But I strongly believe all the plans, the town park, all those things will eventually pay off, and Dewsbury will once again become a thriving town centre and be at the heart of that part of North Kirklees. Plus the practice, once we get the Transpennine finished, we'll have a new Dewsbury, well not a new Dewsbury, we'll have a revamped Dewsbury train station. We're already seeing people looking to invest in creating town centre living in Dewsbury. So, as I said, let's talk it up, not talk it down.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. This is, well, you moved this report, I seconded it, and this is for approval. It's to be it's to be recommended that we pass it to full council for final approval. So can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Okay, moving on, and this will answer some of your question, perhaps, Councillor Moore, to the next item, which is 13, which is the Joint West Yorkshire Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework Development Plan document. An absolute mouthful. Over to Councillor Crook.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll just start by further reassuring Councillor Taylor that the Penistone line is front and centre. I've had a meeting this morning with rail colleagues where I discussed it, and I've got a meeting next week with MPs and other partners also discussing the Penistone line. Absolutely front and centre all the time for me as transport portfolio holder. So back to this item, the Joint West Yorkshire Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework Development Plan document. This paper is a proposal to ask Cabinet to approve the establishment of a joint committee made up from the 5 West Yorkshire authorities, a joint member committee to oversee the drafting of a joint West Yorkshire Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework, brackets Part 1, Development Plan document, or MTSDF DPD for short. And it's a little bit of a mouthful. Also to subsequently recommend to Council to delegate a decision to that joint member committee to undertake initial consultations on the draft Joint West Yorkshire Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework Development Plan document. This is all a bit, well, more than a bit procedural, but it is essentially the process whereby we, as the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, can align spatial plans with transport priorities and also to support the development of Transport Works Act orders necessary for the delivery of big transport schemes. A process that will in future be passed on to combined authorities or strategic authorities as devolution matures. This mechanism is the first step towards bringing a tram to West Yorkshire, into Kirklees and to Dewsbury. It will facilitate work and investment to support the development of a viable business case. This will mean not only a fantastic extension of the planned West Yorkshire tram network, but long before that ambition is realised, huge and meaningful additional investment into our region as potential tram routes are developed as economic investment corridors. We have already seen an investment of £1 million from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to begin to develop a case for tram into Dewsbury, and the potential investment into our region as the momentum through regional devolution and the development of our tram network continues is huge. In supporting this early stage, we are cementing our central involvement in this process and building a case, effectively lobbying for massive investment into the north of Kirklees, as the case for tram network extension gathers pace. I strongly recommend that Cabinet adopt these proposals as the recommended options set out in the papers today at paragraph 6.1 and set the north of our region on the path to far greater investment and prosperity, to being part of the multi-billion-pound tram investment programme being delivered by our Mayor, Tracy Brabin, and collectively by all of us as the West Yorkshire Combined Authority.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Turner, would you like to second that?
Everything that Councillor Crook has said and this policy, this is a long-term strategy. I absolutely get that, but it's really important that we are at the heart of the process and the policy development over the coming years. And as I say, it is a number of years off, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be really putting our time and effort into developing this programme for future generations of Kirklees. And I welcome this report.
Any questions on this report? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a well, there's a slight question at the end, but while it may seem a major opportunity for connectivity, it's important to understand that the current proposal actually what it actually means for Dewsbury. And this isn't a wish. I think it's really important that despite being named in this possible future route, Dewsbury is not included in phase 1 of the mass transit rollout. Phase 1 focuses only on Leeds, Bradford and South Leeds. Dewsbury's inclusion is limited to a feasibility study that may or may not lead to further development. That's very worrying. The report confirms the feasibility work for a Dewsbury line will run alongside development of the overall strategic framework. However, this does not equate to a commitment of a route or an investment. Dewsbury is not included in the media infrastructure or funding priorities. Being mentioned in a feasibility study is not the same as being included in phase 1 infrastructure rollout. It's desperately important that Dewsbury has some kind of lifeline, and I do understand about the mass transit element and key areas where you do have to start it, but it's important that somebody is representing Dewsbury's interests, and I think we need a guarantee from Cabinet today that Dewsbury will not be overlooked again once this feasibility is complete.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. So there's a few things to pick up there. I mean, Dewsbury is not overlooked. Dewsbury's getting a huge upgrade to its rail provision, and it's getting a new bus station. There's other investment that Councillor Turner has already outlined. Absolutely not the case that Dewsbury is being underrepresented in that space. I agree. There is not currently a cast iron commitment to bring tram into Dewsbury. What I'm identifying is that the process of developing that case in of itself is a huge investment opportunity into Dewsbury, and what we're effectively doing here is lobbying for investment into Dewsbury in the north of Kirklees, something which I hope you'll agree is a real positive and something that we should all support. In terms of the development of the case itself, this new Labour government has changed the framework behind that, because Treasury has given advice through the changing of the Green Book advice that BCRs do no longer need to be, above 1 and probably close to 2 from the DFT. So actually the case, making the case for investment to bring tram into Dewsbury has been advantaged further through the new government. I think it's a really fantastic opportunity. I think that as a bare minimum, even if tram isn't delivered in the time frame that you and I might enjoy, the investment as we move towards development of a case is a real positive in of itself. So I want to make that really clear. Thanks.
Thank you. So I thank you for that, Councillor Crook. It's really interesting because I know you will understand how we feel that the real risk of Dewsbury is again left waiting while other areas are allowed to flourish as a priority. And we want to ensure that we receive concrete commitments and resources to allow this Dewsbury Line development project not to just be an exploratory. We want an end game here. We want a destination for Dewsbury to be something, not just a tumbleweed driving through it, which is happening at the moment.
I mean, I fundamentally disagree with what you're saying, and actually talking about Dewsbury in that context to me is the same as Councillor Turner identified earlier. It seems to me talking the town down. We've got a massive commitment to investment into that part of Kirklees. This is just one small part of it. I would like to point out that Dewsbury is the first town in Kirklees that we're working towards inclusion in the tram network, which, as Tracy Braben has repeatedly says, is a commitment to a network across West Yorkshire. The timeframes for delivering this scale of infrastructure project are necessarily long, but again I will identify that what we are doing here is making sure that Dewsbury is included in that conversation through our inclusion as Kirklees in that conversation, and that will in of itself bring investment as business case is developed into Dewsbury. So there is no world in which this particular process is not of massive advantage to Dewsbury and to Kirklees and to the whole of the region. So I absolutely support it.
Oh, it's been moved and seconded. Can I see all those in favour of this report? Thank you. All right, moving on the local development scheme revisions. It's Graham.
Thank you. It's me again. Just to please Councillor Kendrick, who's chuntering at the side of me. So the purpose of today's report is to seek approval for the revised local development scheme to replace the current version from March 2024. The LDS outlines a 3-year timetable for producing developing plan documents, including the local plan and other policy guidance. We seek Cabinet's approval to approve the LDS as outlined in Appendix 1. Delegate authority to publish the approved LDS on the Council's website. Send a copy of the adopted LDS to the MHCLG or Ministry of Housing Communication, Community and Local Government. Allow minor amendments and corrections to the LDS. The reason for this report is in compliance with the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 and the Localism Act 2011. The government monitoring ensures progress towards an up-to-date plans as required by the government. It also contains a revised timetable for the local plan update, mass transit framework, including a timetable of the joint West Yorkshire Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework, which, as we've already heard, is vital to the potential future of both Dewsbury and Kirklees going forward. Despite the length of timescales, these things are not easy done. But updates reflecting changes in national planning policy and legislation. This is an estimated £2 million cost over 5 years for the local plan update. This includes costs for evidence, consultation and examination. Existing staff resources and revenue budget will support the LDS and the mass transit framework. So the next steps will be to publish the LDS following Cabinet approval, and then we'll wait full Council decision on the joint mass transit spatial development framework, which, as we've heard today from Councillor Crook, is vitally important going forward for Dewsbury. So we're developing a comprehensive local plan is a massive undertaking, especially at this time when we see many changes being proposed to the planning system and land designations as the government strives to meet its commitment to build 1.5 million much needed homes over the lifetime of this Parliament. I would like to thank officers for the time and effort in getting to this stage because, as I said, it's a moving feast at the moment, and also for spending significant amounts of time providing feedback to the government through various consultations, requests for information and our thoughts on the proposed planning system revisions, and also for keeping me updated in this ever-changing world. So, Chair, I ask Cabinet to approve this report here today.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I will second that report. Any questions? No, thank you. Anybody else for any comments? No? In that case, can I see those all in favour? Thank you. Agreed. Moving on now, and I'm sorry, it's Councillor Turner again. Surplus. No, I'm not really sorry. Surplus property disposals 25-26 and consideration of objection to the disposal of public open space at Grasscroft, Almondbury.
Chair, I apologise, it is me again. So this we seek approval on delegation. Cabinet to seek approval for the supplementary capital receipt schedule for 25-26 and address the objection of the disposal of public open space at Grass Court, Almondbury. This land was taken back from the existing tenant to allow it to be used as part of the White Rose Forest project. However, on detailed inspection, it was found to be unsuitable for tree planting. Whilst there was one letter of objections and a petition, it's felt that this can be overruled in the current legislation, as the objections would be dealt with by any planning process should an application be made. The objection did not highlight any recreation use or value of the open space as per the report. Also contained in the report, there is one asset that, whilst it's technically described as a disposal, it's actually a transfer from corporate landlord to homes and neighbourhoods, and I apologise for any confusion that has arisen from its description as a disposal. It's also worth noting that any disposals approved today will be done when we have capacity within the organisation to bring these to the market, and when any leases and agreements that have been resolved. These will not be an instant fix, an instant sale. So I do know there's some with leases that, as I said, we won't dispose of them until those issues have been dealt with in accordance to satisfactory outcome to both parties. So I ask Cabinet to approve the disposal of land of property in the supplementary capital receipt schedule, which is Appendix A, and delegate authority to the Executive Director for place to negotiate and complete the sales. Approve the disposal of land of Grasscost Almondbury, which is Appendix B, after considering and dismissing the objection, and revoke the highway improvement lines at Walkley Lane, Hetman Wyke. Within this report, you will see we're aiming to achieve £6 million in capital receipts for 25-26. Hopefully, based on our previous information, we tend to get a little bit more for the property when we support modern market. So hopefully we'll achieve our target income of £6 million. So, Chair, can I ask Cabinet to approve this report today?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Crook.
Thank you. I'm very happy to second this report, and I'd also like to thank Councillor Turner for clarifying the transfer of a single property to the HRA, which is my area of responsibility, and also to apologise to the tenant who was unnecessarily concerned on that basis. Thank you.
Any questions on this particular item? No? Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Right, moving on, Councillor Turner, item 16, 2025-26 to 26-27, corporate landlord capital plans, proposed allocation of capital funding.
Yeah, guess who it is again. So, Chair, this report seeks Cabinet approval of the allocation of capital funding for the corporate landlord baseline programmes for 25-26 and 26-27. To approve the programme of work for 25-26 and 26-27 as detailed in Appendix A. Delegate authority to the Service Director of Development to manage the programmes within the approved budget. Accept and add £76,006 from grant from Sport England and £100,000 from the trustees of Clayton West to the Sisset Bass budget. Baseline budgets, the asset investment is 9.358 million for 25-26 and 7.81 for 26-27. And that is compliance at 1.479 for 25-26 and 1.125 to 26-27. We have welfare budget of 517 for 25-26, 1.068 million for 26-27. Urgent conditions reports and health safety reports and refurbishment of historic assets. Ensures alignment with the Council's corporate asset strategy and major investment programmes. Whilst 9 million might sound like a significant sum of money, and it probably is for some people, we have over 1,500 assets, many of which are listed, and it's always a challenge to keep our assets maintained to the highest possible standards. And the work corporate landlords do with such a small amount of money is exemplary with so many buildings to soak up that money. There's always something to do with these old buildings. So programmes funded through council prudential borrowing with revenue impact included in the medium-term financial plan. So officers to update and manage the programmes, ensuring projects are identified, designed, procured and implemented. So Chair, I seek Cabinet approval for this report here today. As I say, it's an annual thing we do every year, so please can we approve corporate landlords spending money.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'll second that report. Councillor Taylor, I think you have a question.
Yeah, hopefully it's a simple one. Under Appendix A, where it gives a breakdown of how the money is going to be spent, if you look at 20... Oh, God, I've just lost it. 25, 26. I have lost it. Bear with me a second, Graham. Yeah, if we can find Appendix... If anybody can find Appendix A. Right, here we go. In 25, 26, towards the bottom of the list that's entitled Investment Programme, we've got a risk pot, which makes absolute sense to have a problem with the risk pot. And the risk pot shows in 25, 26, £197,658 allocated as a risk pot where the total spend is 9.3 million. Not a problem with that. But then you look in 26, 27, the total spend goes down to 7.8 million, but the risk pot, for some reason, has jumped up from just under 200 grand to just over 600 grand. So why is that?
I will ask the question and get back to you. One of the problems you've got, obviously, is every year we get a little bit more experience with these historic buildings, so perhaps it's been overspent next year. But I will find out why I put that extra in. As I said, I'll double check it. It's not a problem.
Thank you. There's no supplementary on that. No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Turner. It's been moved and seconded. If there's no other questions, are we all in favour of that? Thank you. We've got a change of speaker. Item 17, update regarding progress with the regulatory notice, and that is the housing regulatory notice. Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Chair. I realise this is item 17, but this is an extremely exciting item. This agenda item provides... No, I mean it. This agenda item provides an update regarding progress with the Homes and Neighbourhoods regulatory notice. Following Kirklees Home and Neighbourhoods self-referral to the Regulator of Social Housing and subsequent notice to improve in March last year, the service has undergone substantial and transformational change as it moves towards regulatory compliance, investing in our homes and prioritising tenant safety so that all of our tenants can live in safe, secure and decent homes and receive a high level of customer service. The report in our papers today is to provide an update on the progress we have made against the main areas of deficit in damp, mould and condensation issues and in fire safety, as well as against other areas where we needed to improve, including water hygiene systems and process upgrades, and in terms of governance and resourcing. In damp, mould and condensation, we had a persistent backlog of cases which was putting our tenants at risk, and you will see from the papers today that we've made huge inroads. In fact, we are progressing so fast here that, as an update to the 532 outstanding cases noted in the paper from the 16th of June, we've now reduced this deficit to 380 open cases. An outstanding achievement and actually well below our business as usual target, more than a month ahead of our projected schedule. Other improvements since these papers were printed or presented: 1,783 further water safety tests completed, with full compliance expected to be reached by September, again ahead of schedule, and fire safety actions also completed and identified ahead of schedule. We're also making excellent progress against our outstanding fire safety actions, with work on the first tranche of actions underway and more in process, as well as undertaking with partners all outstanding fire risk assessments at pace. I am very confident that this work will also now accelerate towards compliance and a business as usual position over the next months. Throughout this process, we've worked closely with the Regulator of Social Housing so that they can give us guidance and remain assured that we both understand the issues we have faced and have a clear and effective plan in place to resolve. Because of the really excellent progress the service has made, I can now be very confident in announcing that we expect to have the regulatory notice removed by the Regulator of Social Housing before the end of this calendar year. And I'd just like quickly to thank Kirklees Homes and Neighbourhoods officers who have worked tireless to bring these improvements to our tenants. I know it's not been an easy job. So by the end of this year, I fully expect Kirklees Homes and Neighbourhoods to be a compliant social landlord, delivering a business-as-usual service model which provides a consistent high standard of service to our tenants. As with all social landlords, we will continue to face challenges, not least the acute national housing crisis, which means that demand far outreaches supply, but also increased regulatory standards, including Awab's law, which comes into effect later this year, quite rightly further increasing safety standards for our tenants. But we can now be confident that we are able to meet these challenges and deliver high standards for our tenants, ensuring that the service they receive is not just compliant with regulation, but also constantly improving. I propose that Cabinet note the contents of this report and also join me in congratulating the service and officers for their achievements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. I'll second that report. And Councillor Taylor, you've got a question.
I just want to echo what Councillor Crook's just said. I also sit on the Housing Improvements Board, so I've watched that journey that the officers have gone through and the amount of work that's gone into it and the detail that's been put into it, and it is critical issues that they're tackling. So I just want to echo his, sort of thanks to the officers for the work they've put in, really.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I think, it was a bit remiss of me. I think we all should be thanking officers and be really pleased to see this vast improvement that there is in our council housing stock. So it's been moved and seconded. Is any more questions, comments? Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Okay. We now move on to item 18, variation to the terms of the tenancy agreement. Councillor Crook.
Slightly less exciting than item 17. Me again. This agenda item is asking Cabinet to approve the variation to the terms of the Council's tenancy agreement with our Homes and Neighbourhoods tenants, and which is proposed will take effect from the 18th of August this year. The terms and conditions of our tenancy agreement have not been substantively renewed or reviewed since 2016, during which time our landlord function has returned in-house from the previous arm's length management organisation, although some more minor changes were made to the tenancy agreement in 2022 around rent collection frequency. This update ensures that we're able to remain compliant with regulatory changes that have taken place in the intervening period, as well as reflecting current best practice in the sector. It will clearly set out what our responsibilities are as a landlord, as well as our tenants' responsibilities in occupying one of our homes. It will further define and clarify the areas where we are able to support tenants, as well as the areas where we're not responsible or able to act, so that a clear understanding can form the basis of a good landlord-tenant relationship. A statutory consultation with all of our tenants has taken place already, and feedback is available appended to the papers, along with proposed changes to the agreement. I would like to thank officers for all their work on the tenancy agreement update and propose that Cabinet accept the recommendations as set out on the first page of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Again, I'll second that. Are there any questions on this report? No, thank you. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Sorry, a change of voice now. Back to the Councillor Turner to report on the White Rose Forest Strategic Plan 2550.
Chair, thank you. I promise this is the last you're going to hear from me today. And I'd like to think I'm ending on some really positive news for Kirklees and West Yorkshire and actually the rest of the country in some ways. So we seek approval today for the approved White Rose Forest WRF Strategic Plan 2025-2050. To adopt the WRF Strategic Plan 25-2050 and note the contents of the Integrated Impact Assessment. The WRF is a partnership of 11 organisations across North and West Yorkshire, with Kirklees councils being the accountable body. The strategic objectives are to increase tree canopy cover, protect and restore trees and woodlands, engage communities and business in tree planting and management, promote the benefits of trees and woodlands, enhance the sustainability of the WRF. Sorry, I've got that many papers here today. This project is a real success story, and as a lead authority, I am very proud of the role we have played and continue to play in this project. And not only next week I'm attending a event in York to talk about our role in this project. So this year we've done 802 hectares of trees and woodlands planted across the White Rose Forest. Of this total, 777 hectares were planted as part of our flagship Trees for Climate programme. This equates to 119% of our White Rose Forest target for 23-24 and 39% of all 1,976 hectares planted across England's community forests. England's community forests collectively deliver more than 38% of all DEFRA-funded trees and woodlands, despite covering only 20% of England, making our network the most successful DEFRA partner. The WRF dealt with 360 new woodland creation inquiries from local landowners, and achievements helped the White Rose Forest become Community Forest of the Year 2024, and England's community forests to be offered a place on the government's National Tree Planting Task Force. So, whilst these are impressive figures, I suspect not many people can visualise a hectare, so I went back to officers, because I don't know what a hectare is, how many football pitches it may or may not be. I know the size of a football pitch. So I got it in simple terms. So in simple terms, 794,000 trees have been planted in 23-24 across 175 different projects. Many of these by volunteer groups, and it will be totally remiss of me not to thank every single one of them who have spent time in all weathers, because tree planting season is winter, in some inhospitable places, planting trees that will benefit us all in future years. So I asked Cabinet to publish the adopted plan on the WRF website, and there will be official launch by the mayors of North and West Yorkshire. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. This is just for noting, but it is really good news and certainly something that we should be proud of and happy to lead on as well. Any questions? No? So it is for noting, but I presume we're all in favour of this, of course. Thank you. Right, the last item, item 20, another good news story. Air quality management areas for revocation or amendment 2025. Councillor Addy.
Yes, good news. Today I'm pleased to present a report that marks a positive step forward in improved air quality across Kirklees. Under the Environment Act 1995, Kirklees Council declared 10 air quality management areas, or AQMAs. Thanks to sustained improvements in air quality, we are now proposing to revoke 3 of those, Cooper Bridge and Bradley, Scout Hill and Birkenshaw, and amend 3 others by reducing their size. Those are Ainley Top, Liversidge and Thornton Lodge. This action is not only based on our own monitoring, but also a requirement from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, or DEFRA, where air quality has consistently met national standards for over 3 years. DEFRA expects councils to revoke or amend the AQMAs accordingly. While public consultation is not required for these changes, we have followed the necessary guidance by notifying relevant internal stakeholders, including public health and adjoining local authorities. And I'd also like to clarify that ward members were informed of these changes. It was not a consultation, but a provision of information. These improvements reflect both national and local efforts. Nationally, cleaner vehicle standards have played a major role. Locally, our departments have worked together on targeted schemes. For example, in Birkenshaw, we funded roundabout improvements to reduce emissions. On Blacker Road in Huddersfield, we used Section 106 funds to upgrade the traffic signals and improve flow. And we've made wider signalisation improvements across the district. The proposed actions in this report are a statutory requirement, but it's also a good news story. It's natural to ask, what about the remaining AQMAs and residents' health in those areas? Well, let me reassure you, air quality monitoring continues at 92 locations across Kirklees, including areas where AQMAs are being revoked. The general trend is positive, and we expect to revoke more AQMAs in the near future. Most schools in Kirklees are not within AQMAs, which is encouraging. We are reviewing our air quality action plan to identify further improvements. Our environmental health and planning teams continue to assess air quality impacts of new developments. Our climate change team is expanding the electric vehicle charging network, and we're working closely with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority on regional transport and air quality strategies, as well as locally on the Council's transport strategy. So the new air quality management plan we've talked about is being worked on now, and that's due out next year. And while this report and proposed actions are a step in the right direction, improving air quality is not just the Council's responsibility, it's something we can all have a role in. Residents and families can make everyday choices like using public transport, walking, or avoiding engine idling, especially near schools, to make a difference. Ward councillors can lead by example in their communities and spread the message that we all have a part to play. Together, we can continue to improve the air we breathe, and I ask Cabinet to approve these revocations and amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. I will second that. Are there any comments or questions? No? Nothing from anybody? In that case, can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Right, that's carried, and that is the last item, so that's the end of the meeting. So thank you all very much for attending today. Thank you, Harry. I hope you enjoyed it. Well, that might be an exaggeration. Thank you.